Hello everyone, it's Phoebe from Millennial Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today is a long due ad memoriam video for the passing of Matthew Perry. You may know him for the character Chandler Bing in Friends, the sitcom Friends. As you can see, I've got the mug here. I actually bought it at the studios where the show was filmed. So this is called #Tarot Friends Memoriam, and it's a VR and a homage to the many years that I've spent watching Friends and the ways in which Matthew Perry / Chandler Bing has actually made my life better by making me laugh, by being relatable, by talking about stuff that was absolutely resonating with me and still does. And I am so very sad about his passing. I'm not here to speculate on what happened because I read a lot of articles, and to be honest, I have a little bit of fatigue on that. The point is that unfortunately he did pass, and it was an important figure in when I was in my early 20s. And even afterwards, because I do tend to binge watch Friends every now and then. I just put it on in the background whenever I do some stuff. To the point that I actually know a lot of the dialogue, by heart. So this is a VR in which we're going to have a look at all the main characters of Friends and associate them with a sentence, an iconic sentence from their script, and also find a pairing with a tarot deck that I feel reflects on their personality. Let's have a look. By the way, I'm just easing into the Christmas season from after the spooky season. So you will see the decorations on my background will gradually change. So I've just introduced, this really cute reindeer and a couple of gnomes, as you can tell. So this is just me easing into the season. I'm not going full red and green and and stars and stuff like that, but just gradually approaching it and just trying to calm myself and taking it a very zen manner. So let's have a look at the prompt. So the first prompt is obviously the Chandler. And the sentence that I associate him with is, "Could I be any more missed?" Now, this is not an actual sentence that Chandler has actually said in the show, but I think it's apt, because it's his way of speaking. And if you listen to or read his autobiography, that was one of the reasons why he was cast for that role, because he had a way to put the accent on different words, in a sentence. And so, could I be any more missed? Because I truly miss him very, very dearly, especially after the publication of his memoir. I really felt like I was really close to him even more. He had absolutely no problems in sharing very embarrassing details about his life, his personal life. And he did that not because he had some, thirst for fame or something like that. I mean, after all, he had all the money he could make. He already had it. So it wasn't just, to sell the books. It was because he always said that he really struggled with addiction, and it was so important for him to spread the message out there that if anyone was struggling with addiction, they could have been able to ask him for help, and he would have always said yes. And true to that, he actually sponsored many, many programs. I think he also funded a safe house in LA for addicts that want to kick the habit. And so that is very admirable, I must say. So this prompt is, could I be any more missed? It's a tarot deck that is out of print, but everyone wishes it came back. And I have to go with the slow tarot, because every time that I hear someone talking about slow tarot, they always go, "Oh, I really wish it was reprinted." Even myself, I have the slow tarot, but I would love to have a second copy of it, because I actually love to use it as well. And whenever I use a deck, I don't spare it. So, In many cases, whenever I really love a specific deck, I would buy a couple of copies just to feel safe and protected, and just to know that whatever happens to one of the two copies, the one I'm using typically, you know, it doesn't matter, because I have a second one. I have a plan B. And if you watch my channel, you will know how important it is for me personally to have a plan B. This deck is fantastic. It's got a very beautiful take, modern take on the RWS, without though losing any kind of directness in the symbols. And just to give you an idea, this is the 5 of coins. Of course, we're talking about being left out in the cold, being cast aside, being exiled, being also unjustly so. And it could also refer to, you know, financial problems. And this card is really beautiful. So I don't know if you can tell. So it's taken from the above. It's like a photo taken from the above, and it's a person that is, you know, asking for money, begging for money on the street. And there's a few coins dropping into the mug. Now, this is very evocative to me. It really gives you the opportunity to combine the alchemical reading of the suit of Pentacles, as, you know, the suit that refers back to financial or career related matters, but it's also pointing out at the conflict arisen by the numerological meaning of the 5. And I know that there's a lot of decks that more or less take you that with this kind of, you know, symbology. However, the modern take on it, sometimes in different decks, is not as strong. And I really admire when an author, creator, an illustrator can actually achieve that by, you know, still resonate with readers that focus on the traditional RWS, and readers that prefer a modern take on it. So this is definitely a deck that it's out of print, it's hard to find, but everyone wishes that it came back. I do have good news story, because I do remember reading in a newsletter somewhere a couple of months ago that they were looking into reprinting it. However, that was a couple of months ago, and I haven't heard anything else since. And I've been, you know, buying and collecting decks for over 3 decades now, and I know that just saying that someone wants to reprint a deck doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to reprint it. So, you know, I've obviously hoped that it will be, but it's not necessarily going to happen just because they said that. So this is my prompt for the Chandler, and the Chandler is, could I be any more missed? A tarot deck that is out of print, but everyone wished it came back. So the next prompt is the Rachel. The sentence is, I got off the plane. And I don't know if you remember it. It's the last episode actually of the show. And obviously, you know, Rachel and Ross have been on and off and on and off the entire show for 10 seasons, right? And what happened was that at the end, she finds a job in Paris, so she has to, you know, prepare herself to leave, and she says goodbye to everyone. But she can't just say goodbye to Ross, and they end up being together for that night, sleeping together. And when she leaves in the morning, Ross is crushed, because he thought at the beginning that sleeping together would have meant that she might consider staying for him. But she's literally going through with that, so she goes to the airport, and Ross just decides, thanks to Phoebe's prompts, he decides that he cannot live without her, but he has to say something. And so they, you know, Phoebe and Ross chase Rachel to the airport. They went to the wrong airport first, and then they eventually find her, but she's checked in already, and you know, it's a very difficult moment for her. I kind of understand her, because it's like, okay, you know, everything is emotional already. It's so hard to decide what to do. But in the end, you know, she actually gets off the plane. And I don't know about you, but there's all sorts of alarm. So if you even dare getting off a plane, especially an international flight, after you've been checked in, you're on board. I think depending on the country, in some countries you actually end up in jail, or they do an investigation on you, it's a very severe offense. I was in just one personal experience. I've actually seen people getting off a plane after having checked in and being boarded and being inside the plane, and they were detained by the police. So, and they just got off the plane because their luggage had not been checked in. So they were not, they were not criminals or anything, but they still were detained by the police. So the prompt is, I got off the plane, a tarot deck that comes through for you in the end. I had to go with the Modern Seer Tarot. This has been created and written by Christine McGraw. This deck, unfortunately, is not easy to come by, and it's out of print as well. Apologies for that, although, the Slow Tarot is supposed to be reprinted. This deck, I have no idea what happened. I found it in a Facebook group. I paid a reasonable amount for it. It looks like every time I try to look for the website that also refers back to the Kickstarter, the domain has been deregistered and it's up for grabs. So it's definitely not, unfortunately, not in print anymore. What you can do, you can try and email the creator, or you can try and find it in a Facebook group or an email on Etsy. It wasn't a small print that went off at the beginning, and I believe that you don't really see it in a trade group because it's so beautiful. I love the simplicity of it. I love the fact that it's almost one single line that actually shapes the contour of the characters on the cards, and there is such skill in depicting the meanings of the cards. Look at this Five of Cups, for example. You have to convey the sadness, but you also have to convey the fact that there's something still standing. So not everything is doomed. So there's a lot that goes on in this artwork. The irony is that Christine McGraw is a painter, indeed. That's her, vocation. However, her paintings have got nothing to do with this. This is not her typical art style. And so the paintings, and they don't resemble this. She obviously does not stop at paintings. There's sketches as well, which resemble this a lot closer. But this is just absolutely superb. I really enjoy this style. The simplicity, as I said, of that actually creates elegance in the cards, because it's a play, it's a game between absence of beads of elements in the card and the presence of the line, and it's so very neat. So this deck, spiritually and personally, has come through for me always. Every time I use it, it comes through. Perhaps at the end, perhaps it takes a couple of spreads, but it's a fantastic reader. It's really a fantastic reader. And when I imagined that prompt, I actually visualized the deck immediately because I knew this was gonna be it. So this is the Rachel. I got off the plane. A tarot deck that comes through for you in the end, the Modern Seer Tarot. So the third prompt is the Ross. We were on a break. And if you remember, that's the moment in which she's saying this. It's actually really so much fun. And it sparked debates forever. I mean, I still have friends actually discussing whether they were actually on a break and he was really allowed to sit with someone else because he thought that they were on a break, or people say no, he shouldn't have, because even if he thought that he were on a break, that doesn't mean that he can sit with someone else, and it would have been better just to discuss the problem between the two of them. I don't want to take any sides because I've seen it spiral. I've seen friendships being broken because of that, because people thinking the opposite, and it's so much fun. I mean, obviously the situation itself is not fun at all, But I've seen videos and memes on, well, everywhere online. There's even someone who made the experiment. So basically, they bought a bunch of stuff from different providers, and they expected a lot of deliveries within the arc of 2 days. And then they put two, doormats at the door, and one saying, and they put a sign with the question, do you think that Ross and Rachel were on a break? So for yes, they asked the delivery person to put the parcel on the right doormat, and for yes, they asked the person to put it on the left doormat. And it was so much fun because with the camera outside, you could see people, delivery person arriving at the doorstep and reading the question, and most of the time chuckling and laughing about it, and then deciding and just putting the parcel either on the right or on the left. I'm not gonna tell you which one won because it was a bit of a surprise, but it was so much fun. So the Ross is, we were on a break, a tarot deck I fall in and out of love with constantly. And I had to go with the Goliath tarot deck. This is the second edition. I used to have the first edition. I actually rehomed it. Then I bought the second edition when it was on sale, and I rehomed that as well. And now I put it in a bag because it's it's a large deck, but I don't really like the way in which it's stored because it's just dividing the deck in two, which I'm not a fan of. This deck, okay, the reasons why I fall in love with this deck, first of all, because the artwork is amazing. These are the backs and they are amazing as well. It's an animal deck. It's an Australian creator, even though he sells only from the US, which is, it's really, I don't know, a couple of years ago was, really minding about that, but now that I'm personally trying to support Australian companies, everything I do, I always try and choose Australian first because there is a crisis. There is a really horrible financial crisis going on in Australia at the moment. So I'm really doing my best to do that. And when I see that someone is actually choosing printers overseas and giving a privilege to the US market, I'm happy for my US subscribers, of course, like you, but it doesn't help the Australian economy. Well, let's say that obviously there are reasons why this deck is fantastic. I love it. It's got a few cards that can be used as oracle. These are the cards, and then obviously the tarot cards as well. It's one of those decks that it packs so much into the cards, and yet the artwork doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like it's actually too busy. There are spiders, sorry about that, should have said that before. There's a couple of cards that are a bit intense, and that's the main reason why I actually ended up rehoming the first edition and the second edition. And that's the reason why I fall out of love with it, because of those cards. It's more than one. Had it been just one, I would have probably just, put up with it. It really is because of a certain type of way in which the creator has displayed the eyes of a few animals. Not this one in particular, but there is one. For example, this one is very strong and very intense. It is very beautiful. So please understand, it's not related to the fact that I don't appreciate the art. It's fantastic and I do appreciate it. It's just because I find a couple of cards a bit too intense for me, especially because of the eyes. I have a problem with eyes. I'm not the only person. There's actually a something recognized by the DSM, I'm pretty sure. And it's just something that, I have to be aware of. There are tarot decks, for example, the wooden tarot. I cannot look at it because it's got too many eyes. And this one as well. So this one is not too bad, but to be honest, the card that really made me rehome the deck each and every time, this one is quite strong as well, but it's I think it's the Devil card. And of course, when I'm talking about a specific card, because of Murphy's Law, there you go. because of this card, I actually rehomed the deck a couple of times, so I fell out of love with it. However, every time that I see it in a different channel, on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, I just fall in love with it again, because it is incredibly expressive. It's okay, that's another card. It's expressive, it's beautiful, it's very... So the guidebook itself is amazing. I mean, the time the creator must have spent on this deck, it must have been years, because it's a one-man job and it's very difficult to get to this level of perfection, when you're doing everything yourself. So I'm very appreciative of the effort that has been put into this deck. But on the other hand, I had to rehome it a couple of times because of that thing, because of those cards. So this is my choice for the Ross. We were on a break, a tarot deck I fall in and out of love with constantly. So the next prompt is the Phoebe, and it's related to an exchange of sentences between Monica and Phoebe. So Monica asks, Phoebe, do you have a plan? And Phoebe says, I don't even have a plan. So that is really funny, because it's, I think, still season 1, and they are on the cusp of those early 20s or mid 20s in which you realize that you kind of have to start getting serious about things. And so, they ask themselves, do I have a plan? What am I going to do? Who am I going to become? And you need to understand that now it's very common for people to admit their shortcomings and their problems and their issues. There is no stigma in admitting that we are weak and we are scared. But back then, it was the 90s. In the 90s, you were not supposed to say those things. In the 90s, you were supposed to say that you had everything figured out and everything was going to be fine. And it came after the 80s that were full of uncertainties. So obviously in the 90s, there was this power, this season of everything is going to be fine no matter what. And that was the kind of feel that everyone had. And so admitting that you did not have a plan, that you did not know where you were going or who you were going to be, was a liberation for many of us, because we were watching other shows and everyone was a super cool doctor, or a super cool detective, or a super cool fireman, or a super cool lawyer, and everyone had huge salaries, and we were in our early 20s and we were barely scraping by. And all of a sudden, finally, there is someone that in a show literally says, I have no idea what I'm going to do. So the Phoebe, I don't even have a plan. A tarot deck that relies entirely on intuition and the spur of the moment. And I had to go with the spiritual tarot, because Phoebe is also a very spiritual person, and it's very odd that she actually never uses tarot cards in the show. If you watch the show, I'm pretty sure she doesn't. I mean, she goes to a psychic, for example. I remember that, but I don't actually remember her talking about tarot, which is very odd, because you would imagine someone like her so very in tune with her own inner goddess and her own intuition, actually reading tarot, but she doesn't. So this is really beautiful. It's a really beautiful deck, but it does have that really kind of spirituality. It reflects on the intuition. You need intuition to read these cards, even though in many cases the elements are there, the symbology is there, but you still need to form your own attachment to the decks. In many cards, you may have to read the description on the booklet just to understand what's going on. It's a very beautiful deck. I love this star card. There's a lot going on in here. So even this Four of Swords, for example, this has the most, let's say, non-traditional depiction of the suit of swords in all the decks that I remember at the moment. So the Four of Swords, it's not your traditional resting person with the swords, hanging on top. And so you really have to find your own way to interact with this deck on a spiritual level, because it is a deck that actually inspires a lot of spirituality. It does inspire a lot of intuition, and also the spur of the moment for me, because being spontaneous is what you need to read with this deck. Being spontaneous as much as Phoebe was, with, you know, sometimes not being scared of being ridiculous, of sounding ridiculous, of sounding like you didn't really have it all together, because she didn't. She came from a very difficult adolescence. So her mom killed herself, and then her dad ran away, and she had to live with, you know, on the street. So of course, she's rough around the edges. She has a thick skin, but she's also very candid. But she's very, she doesn't really have a lot of barriers between what she feels inside and the way in which she presents it to the outside world, which is exactly the feeling you have when you look at the cards in this deck. I really like it, by the way. It's the Spiritual Tarot, and this is my choice for the Phoebe. I don't even have a tarot deck that relies entirely on intuition and the spur of the moment. So the next prompt is the Joey, how are you doing? It's a tarot deck that flirts with you, but then doesn't call you back. So I'm not here to judge. It's a horrible thing to do, but it was again, you know, it was typical for Joey, and it's repeated over and over and over again throughout the whole show. All of the seasons, that Joey was the one you could rely on to just, you know, flirt with all of the women, but then, you know, after sleeping with them, it would just not call them back, which is horrible. But in the spirit of the show, so I just wanted to immortalize that, because that is so very typical of him. So it's a tarot deck that flirts with you, but then doesn't call you back. I had to go, and this is going to be painful, I had to go with the Lorenzi Tarot by Lorenzi. This is a US Games, I think. Yeah, it should be. Yes. So this deck is beautiful. Let me explain why I chose it for this prompt. It's a beautiful deck, really beautiful. The booklet or the guidebook could do with a bit more information, to be honest, because even for the majors, as you can see, you don't have a lot of explanation, even though at least it talks about the actual character on the cards, and not just about the Empress of the High Priestess in general. You do have the same length of description when it comes to the minors as well, so that at least is a plus if we want to see it that way. But let's have a look at the deck itself, because I honestly have not seen it, well, in any YouTube channel, any other media. It is beautiful. I really love it. It's a very flirty deck in the sense that it really invites you in. And by inviting you in, I mean it also by, you know, physically leaning in, because this, for example, this is a sentence, and it's so tiny. Let me see if I can show you, but I don't know if you can read it. So it says here, nothing is as it seems. So this is the Star card, and generally speaking, the Star card is my favorite card in the deck because it's reflecting my zodiac sign. And for once, you know, because Aquarius has been really, Aquariuses have a really tough life, I can assure you, because everyone's like, oh, you're cold. No, we're not cold. But for once, we are associated with a wonderful card and a major arcana, so I'm always bringing that to the attention of people. Yes, we might seem like cold people, but actually we're healing. You know, we're aided by the ancestors, and we're the healing card and the card of direction. We're taking you back home, and you know, and I really try hard to explain that I'm not a cold person. So going back to the card, it invites you in because you really have to lean in order to be able to read and decipher what it actually says. And that's not just the Star card, but it's in other cards as well. And when it's not a sentence, like there's a sentence here in the Death card as well, and here as well, but you really have to struggle to read it. When it's not a sentence, you have to really lean in and decipher what the symbols are. So it's a flirty deck because it promises you something interesting, something enticing, something fun. You know, it's flirting with you, it's seductive, and it really gets to the point in which you're drawn into the card and you enjoy your time with the deck. I mean, look at this Ten of Cups. Isn't it fantastic? And it's got the pig from the Pink Floyd album as well. So all of these references are really interesting, and you know, you spend your good time looking at them, enjoy understanding the symbology. It is, I think it is objectively beautiful. However, and this is, you know, there's so many references, but what happens is that it doesn't call you back, in the sense that you don't feel like using it again and again, like as if you were in a relationship. This is a flirty deck. It's a one night stand deck, but it's not one of those decks you would want to have a steady relationship with. You don't really want to go the distance with this deck. You like it, as I said, very flirty, very beautiful, very convincingly interesting, and you really feel it's a positive thinking, it's a positive feeling about, you know, leaning into the cards and looking at them and interpreting them. But then it stops there, so it doesn't necessarily bring any promise of a future together. That's exactly what it is. So this is the Joey. How are you doing? A tarot deck that flirts with you, but then doesn't call you back. And the next and last prompt is the Monica with 777. I'm not going to explain what the scene was about. If you watched the show, you will know. If you haven't watched it, just Google it and you will see the scene on YouTube, and it's so much fun. Again, it was so very important for those years, for those of us in our early 20s, because it talks about sexual relationships, and you know, it talks about finally understanding that not everything goes right, not everything is easy. And so, you know, giving the possibility to women to actually speak up and say what they like and what they dislike. And again, for the 90s, that wasn't as common as you would see it right now. And I like to think that Friends actually opened up the possibility to share more when it comes to these kind of things. So the 7777 is a tarot deck that hits all the right spots. Now, if you want to understand, if you want to read between the line, you can read between the line. It's fine. I have chosen the Millennial Tarot, and in this case I have to do a little bit of a disclaimer, in the sense that yes, I know that this is a one of the first results of AI art. However, it's not just AI. It has been produced with a lot of personal contribution from the artists, the creators themselves. And I am not a millennial. I am Casper. But I have no problem in identifying myself with Gen X or you know, Casper, or I'm fine with that. I don't have, Lordy calls it postcode envy. I call it generation envy. I don't have that. I am what I am. And I really believe that if you address this deck without necessarily stopping on the word millennial and asking yourself whether you identify with being a millennial or not, you actually will enjoy this. It's a beautiful deck, and the reason why I chose it for this prompt is because there is a kind of a reinterpretation of the titles, not the suits. So the suits, of course, are renamed as well. So we've got cups renamed as feels, swords renamed as thoughts, and so on. But what I really like is that each and every card has got a very modern take that is expressed through a title. So the Nine of Thoughts, for example, which is Nine of Swords, is Sunday Scaries. That works perfectly for me. It is indeed the Sunday Scaries, because oh my god, I mean, the Sunday afternoon, I would say, scaries. You know, the week is almost starting again, and with that, all the anxiety related to work, and you know, not spending time with your partner, your family, And so it's perfect. It's just perfect. So each and every one, I have to say, there's only one card I actually disagree with, but all of the other 78 are spot on for me. It does hit all the spots. Now, the Five of Thoughts, so the Five of Swords, is gaslighting. You know, if you read the way in which Pixie actually intended the depiction of the Five of Swords, it is gaslighting, because there's a giant that actually turns two factions of people one against each other by saying that they were planning to overcome. One was planning to overcome the other, and it does the same behind the back of the other. So basically, it is gaslighting. It's the principle of gaslighting, and I really like that it's, you know, it's expressed this way. So if you don't know this deck, I highly recommend having a look. There is just one thing that I need to specify, apart from the fact that yes, it is the very beginning of an AI art kind of experiment. There's also participation, actual participation in the production of the deck by the creator and illustrator themselves. I personally don't mind. I love it so much that I focus on the way in which the titles are hitting all the spots for me. But there is one thing, so it is a large deck, as you can see, almost covers my entire hand. If you have small hands like mine, it's probably very difficult to shuffle, and it's also very slippery. And I remember, I think it was Lisa saying that she was talking to the creators, and they were mentioning that for a second edition they were probably going to change the cardstock, although I don't have any further information on that. The Hierophant is the Instagram guru. The page of swag is coins, and the coins is actually Bitcoin. Look at that. Is a personal trainer. The Magician is the tech visionary. The Four of Pentacles is the pyramid scheme, and so on and so forth. Honestly, this deck feels like it's giving a very brilliant interpretation of the symbology, and it's giving it that kind of vibe that I think is not just appealing to millennials, because as I said, I'm a cusper, but I still find it very appealing, and it's very enjoyable for me as well. So I mean, why not? I really enjoy using this deck. It's always spot on everything, and it's actually made me, or helped me change my mind around a couple of cards. So yeah, I like it. I know it's AI, I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I know all the ethical issues related to that. I'm just saying the keywords are fantastic. So this is the Monica with 777, and it's a tarot deck that hits all the right spots. Now that was the last one. We've done the Chandler, the Rachel, the Ross, the Phoebe, the Joey, and the Monica. This is a homage. So I just wanted to say, you know, with my way of saying it with tarot, that I am so very saddened by the passing of Matthew Perry, and because it really meant something to me when I was you know, navigating some really hard experiences in life, and I felt like I wasn't alone. So this is just a way to say thank you. So if you like this deck, I invite you to do it as well. If you love the show, if you love the character, you know, this is an opportunity, or not, just, you know, watch it and enjoy it. If you find different prompts, please go for it. I was thinking about adding prompts for Janice, for example, or Gunter, for example. But, you know, in the end, I thought let's just stick to the original ones. So thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.